Welcome back to Random Gleanings. It's still the beginning of the year, Jesse. I mean, if there's a video you were going to share with anyone in your family or friends from a younger standpoint, just kind of the financial life coach type stuff, building wealth, this is probably it. I want to tell you a story.
Okay.
So when I was 24 years old, I'm 51 now. I just remember, I remember my dad growing up saying, you know what? You can't be on the paying side of compound interest. You got to get to the point of building assets, right?
Yep.
And he didn't always tell me how, but to his credit, he was saying it, right? So here I was, 24. I had $21,000 in credit card debt, and 17% interest, and
it compounds fast too.
It does, and I remember trying to get out of that, right, by doing the move money between credit cards game. Which is kind of embarrassing because this is where I started my career at 21, and that's not good, right? So today we thought it'd be good to talk about building wealth and sort of some life coach type stuff.
Yep. Yeah, no, listen, and truth is, I was in the same position. I tell people jokingly, I was spending myself into a giant hole while I was in the Army, and the joke I have is, I was pretending, I could die today or I could die tomorrow, so I'm going to live today is what I would say, right? And obviously I came out of that alive.
Yes, you did.
And found myself in a big hole.
Yeah, that's right.
So been there, done that as well. And I think you're right. Let's share. Let's publicly undress a little bit.
Yeah. So I got out of that hole, which is great. And, it took a while.
Yep.
And it was expensive, and that sucks.
Yep.
But I can tell you, so I went digging because we're going to talk about inspecting what you expect, how to work on building wealth simply by using some ratios and some pretty common sense tools, right?
Yep.
But no one necessarily teaches you this stuff, and there's a boatload of stuff sitting out there, in the interwebs, and so here it is.
Well,
it's real simple.
It's very attractive to go spend on a. I had a buddy in the Army that said, "Oh, I love this plastic, credit card because you never have to pay it back." Right. And obviously he was joking, but at the same time, the appeal of spending is very, very attractive, and yet it doesn't get us where we ultimately want to be.
So, first chart. Here is my net worth statement at the end of December 2002. I was 30 years old. Okay, and had a net worth of $64,000. So clearly, I was out of the minus sign side of things, but I was at $64,000. Okay, me and my wife at that point. And next graphic, I look at 2005's sheet, and it's at $204,000 of net worth. That's good, right? Like it's moving in the right direction. So do you think that just happened by accident, or do you think it's because we started to inspect what we expect?
I mean, absolutely. That's how it happens. You've got to start to pay attention to those things. So I'll just go ahead and show mine as well. It was a few years after you and I started working together. You had shared something akin to this kind of net worth dashboard at that time, and I started tracking things. This is not yet 10 years ago that I found myself with a net worth of $85,000. And if you go to the bottom right of this chart, you can see what we're going to talk about here, the Prodigious Accumulator of Wealth.
Yep.
Right? And my percentage of targeted net worth was at a 26.5%.
So you had 26.5% of the net worth that the PAW formula said you should have had at that point in time.
That's right. So tell everybody what the PAW formula is and where it comes from.
I'll also note you were saving 12% of you guys' wages, not take-home pay, wages. You were saving 12% of your pre-tax wages, which is a good direction. Okay, the PAW formula, Prodigious Accumulator of Wealth. So our friend Dr. Tom Stanley wrote a book called The Millionaire Next Door, which probably is the primary book that kind of had an impact on me financially. And it was written in 1996. Now, that's not when I started reading it. In fact, I don't remember exactly when I read it. But the PAW formula. The PAW formula is the big piece of this equation. The PAW formula is 1/10 your age times your income, or to do it a different way, age times your annual pre-tax income divided by 10 is your target net worth. And you'll see here, I mean, you'll see people talk about, if you go out on Twitter and you look at the Millionaire Next Door, you'll see all sorts of things. I liked this particular tweet. Millionaire Next Door showed me that a majority of millionaires live below their means. Financial importance is more important than social status, and millionaires focus on building assets. So how do you focus on building assets? Right. Well, the first thing you have to do is start tracking assets.
You very much do. Yeah. And again, I think you have encouraged myself and we now encourage clients that it is about gross income, right? And we've got to kind of build off of that.
Yep.
And you know, budget, I tease, is a 4-letter word to some people, but it's so foundational as to, well, it's going to help me point the dollars that I'm earning in the direction that I want them to go.
Yep, that's right. So going back to your net worth spreadsheet from 2014, 13, basically you've got assets and then you've got liabilities, right? It's what you own minus what you owe. Yep. Okay, well, that's how you begin to focus on buying assets. It's tracking your assets.
That's right.
And so many people don't track their assets, right? But this PAW formula, once you start tracking what you own versus what you owe, your assets versus your liabilities, it now becomes a game, right? And by the way, it becomes an addictive game, which is good in this case because now you're focused on building that wealth. Okay. So here's your PAW formula today.
Yep. Yeah. I took out net worth because it could expose a little bit more about me than I'm necessarily excited to share about today. But all that's to say is I really do think of this as my financial health check. Right. And to have grown from 26.5% targeted net worth to where it is today, it's exactly what you said, inspect what you expect. It was not by accident that this thing has grown to where it's grown today.
Yep.
It was by attention and discipline.
That's right. And so I'm going to share mine in the same way. And yes, I redacted the targeted net worth. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is if you're tracking it, that's going to get you on the goal of actually getting there to build wealth. Now, there are some other things that you can measure along the way too, sort of key performance indicators if you will. I mean, certainly percentage of pre-tax income saved, which was one on your net worth statement a minute ago. Here's some others to track from year to year. On my sheet, I've got year-to-date progress. So last year it was up. Assets increased. Now listen, some of that was the market. Some of that was real estate. Real estate values in the Southeast do continue to go up. Now,
all things equal, if you're just saving, you're going to have at least a percentage of your total
that's correct,
net worth, right? And so it's part of that as well.
Assuming the assets stay at least at zero and don't go down in value.
Right.
That's right. Now, liabilities. So my liabilities didn't decrease that much last year. Why is that? Well, because the rate, I got a 2 7/8 mortgage. Right. I mean, I'm not exactly in a hurry to pay that thing off. But tracking either dollars or percentages in terms of knowing what your assets went up, knowing how much your liabilities went down, those are definitely good things to know. And then when we start getting into other type of ratios, like basic liquidity ratio, for example. So a basic liquidity ratio, it just calculates the time and months that you can meet your expenses, what it costs you to run your household on a monthly basis, how many months of cash and or investment assets that you can procure.
Right.
Keeping in mind, some would say you don't need to track anything other than cash in that ratio. I disagree, right?
Well, I mean, in an emergency situation, if you've got assets that are still liquid, not counting a penalty from an IRA, right?
Right.
Then I think it is fair to count that. But hey, you do you. Just move yourself forward.
That's right. And then the bottom one there, investment assets to net worth ratio, is effectively taking anything that's liquid, right? Whether it's after tax, whether it's pre-tax, et cetera. And the goal is just to kind of keep you from being too locked into illiquid assets.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So, I mean, the big point here is track your ratios, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're tracking ratios, then you're moving toward the notion of inspecting what you expect, right?
I mean, assuming that your expectation is to grow your wealth, whether that be because you want a big net worth or just because you want financial independence, understanding the various ratios that help you understand where your financial health is, I cannot promote it enough.
So we actually last year worked to begin to use a piece of software that kind of does this in an app format and can update values and stuff like that. I still primarily do a lot of it in a spreadsheet. That probably wouldn't surprise you. But
As do I.
yeah, but I mean, there is software out there that we utilize. If you'd ever like to talk to us about using the software to
in fact, we'll put a
numbers.
QR code in at the end of this video such that you could scan that if you were interested. But reach out to us if you want the software. If you want a version of the spreadsheets. The important thing is you start tracking it, whether it's pen and paper or through a tool. Make sure you start tracking that stuff.
And by the way, this is important to know as well. I've been doing this personally on a monthly basis, updating that spreadsheet since back in, I don't have versions going all the way back to 2002, but you go back to like the mid 2000s, I have a net worth spreadsheet from every month going back into the mid 2000s. And that's how you inspect what you expect.
Yeah. The neat thing there is, and I've done the same thing since 2014. I did it earlier. I lost a computer and lost all my files. But all that's to say, it's a reminder of where you've been as well, right? And it's not an overnight success story, but it is a success story because of the discipline that you've instilled to get yourself where you are.
That's right.
So.
That's right. You got anything else?
Just an apology to Bills fans out there. I got a friend that's a big Bills fan, and the Kansas City Swifts put a licking on them at the end
Swifts.
I'm sorry, the Chiefs. So anyway, fun game nonetheless, and again, another fun weekend of football for me. What'd you do?
We watched some football too, but I'm getting ready to do some woodworking stuff for my daughter, which is exciting.
Cool.
But
Keep us informed.
yeah, True Detective, man. It's it's hard not to see Jodie Foster kind of in a little bit of that Silence of the Lambs kind of way, just a little bit.
Okay.
It's a little freaky.
Yeah.
But it's cool. So glad to be watching it.
Cool. Well, listen, thank you all so much for watching. If there's one video you want to share with a friend, hopefully it'd be one like this where we're giving you an action item in which to improve yourself, improve your life, push this along to somebody that you know and you care about. Hit subscribe, hit like, and come back and see us again next week. Thanks.